You know, it was just like, I was sick. Again, I just got sick from being too involved in the online space. But yeah, No Justice, No Peace was sort of my thing, but I'm familiar with the fact that you were involved in BLM. So I'm curious to know, like, what drew you away from BLM?
That's the question I get every day of my life. No, I'm kidding. So my answer is it's a two-part answer. So first, I want to preface when I say this that I do not regret at all organizing a Black Lives Matter in Columbus, Indiana in 2016. I'm very proud of what we did. We and everyone involved, we raised like $5,000 for Flint, Michigan's water crisis. We did charity work, volunteered in the city, worked with local chapters. I believe we did bring a very positive, impact to the city when it came to our racial division. And even our city's Columbus, Indiana, a very, very conservative town. And 2018, when I left because I went to NYU, they wrote a very nice article of farewell to BLMC because of the impact that we made in that city and that we did challenge that city, but in a good way. And I was astonished. I was like, wow, like that says something right there. But like I said, I stepped down as leader 2018 to go to NYU. But in 2018, that's when I started questioning the direction of the national BLM and wondering, is this the right way to champion Black lives? First thing that came to mind that I got suspicious of was the objectives used to be very clear, and then they started to get way more vague. And then the second thing was when it came to just basic race relations between Black, white, and different races of people coming together and talking, the approach of how the national BLMs people said to do it didn't make sense and was really exclusive to people. And I was like, how are we going to gap this racial divide if certain people can't talk about their perspective?
Right.
And just certain things that I used to say out loud, like I used to be in that house of being like, only we can talk, or go Google it, white people. I used to say it all the time, and I'm not going to act like I didn't. But when I started to sit with myself, I was like, this doesn't really make logical sense. This actually doesn't make sense. So I talk more about this on Brett Weinstein's podcast. So I'm not going to belabor the point. I'll just skip right to the moment where I was like dissociated myself.
Right.
So the catalyst. So there's a lot of other things that happened, but the catalyst was that incident in D.C. Did you hear about when a bunch of BLM protesters, I say protesters in quotes because I don't even know if they were really protesters, but they intimidated diners to say Black Lives Matter. And if you didn't, you're a racist. And if you didn't put up your fist, you're a white supremacist, like all of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The funny thing is, most of those protesters weren't Black. So in the next, headline the next day, when they say, BLM protesters, intimidate diners, no one's going to think, I wonder if they're white. Like, no, they're going to assume they were Black.
Right.
So I was like, if these people really cared about Black lives, they would have rethought that whole thing and realized this is going to backfire on the people they say they're allying for, that you're advocating for. If you really cared about Black lives, you would have never done that. So I was like, this is just the biggest display of narcissism and moral ego trip. So I was waiting for the national BLM to denounce that, because I was like, well, they'll do it. Like, I was just like, there's no worries. And they'll do it. And a week goes by, and they didn't do it. And I'm like, don't you realize that this is going to stigmatize the movement more? Like, this is going to stigmatize the name even more. And then when I started thinking about it, I was like, it sucks, but I can't attach my work to BLM anymore. Not this national BLM, because I care so much about Black lives.
Yeah.
If an organization, I feel deep down, really isn't doing much for Black lives, then I'm not going to attach it just because they're saying it on a headline. There's other Black organizations that are doing real work that I can pour into, So I dissociated during that time, and I think that was like officially dissociated 2020, so a year ago.
Yeah.
I did go to BLM like protests, but I went more as a journalist when I was in New York. I didn't like protest. I was just there observing and reporting. So I was really up there being objective and just getting the facts of what was going on.
Yeah.
But one last thing I want to say is why it took so long for me to disassociate was because there are BLM chapters, grassroots, who are actually right now writing letters, articles. One ran in the New York Times, I believe, challenging the BLM establishment and saying, you guys have $90 million, $80 million. Like, why haven't we seen any of this money? Like, we have people homeless. We have people, we need, like, for education for kids. Like, people are hungry. Like, all of these things. Where's the, why are you even hoarding it? Like, that's, you say you're going to pour into Black lives. Why are you not pouring into Black lives?
Right.
Why is it that the attention seems to come when we die? Like, what about us living right now? You know?
Yeah.
So that's why it took a while, because I know people are really doing work, but you know, some things are just not meant to be fought. Like, some things are losing battle.
Yeah.
And that was one of them. So.
Oh boy.
And you said you never did BLM, right?
No.
No.
I only just, paid attention at a distance, but I was internally, I was very distraught at the shooting of Philando Castile. And I think that's kind of what drove my sort of virtue signaling online activism. But at the same time, I was emotionally distraught, so much so, like, I feel like physical illness is always kind of an indicator of like where I start to question, like, was this even correct? Because I was like, to the tail end of 2016, that event just like destabilized everything in my life. So yeah, that was as much as my interaction with BLM went. But I didn't really know much about the chapters. I didn't know about the LA chapter. I just wasn't that aware of it at the time, like in 2016.
So what is your friends, like, were your friends very, I hate using the word woke. I mean, there's no other word to use, but you know what I mean. Were they really into the movement? And
oh, good question. No, I would say we were all just generally, as college students, we were all generally aware of what was happening and in line with being as helpful as we could be for the cause of like Black lives. Like, we were upset at police brutality. I was particularly frustrated with just the pattern about like, of just killing people. This one shooting I saw, and this I think was more of a no justice, no peace activism issue. And this might have been a bit older than the time I was in the United States, but there was this man crossing the street in Beverly Hills. And I just remember it was this quick documentary that my professor was working on about no justice, no peace. And this man was just like shot, like dead cold in the street. And that's all I saw, but it was enough to kind of like infuriate me. But no, I don't think, I think we were all just flowing like sheep in the same direction. So the wokeness was just like, everyone was kind of like on board with it. But to the did I ask people about it? Did I really talk in depth about it? Sure, we lamented, we cried, but it was like, it wasn't super involved. It was almost like a superficial empathy in a way. But yeah, I wanted to ask you something very interesting. What would you, so I didn't really have those conversations, right? Like, I didn't really engage with what wokeness was. It just was. But what would you say? You were way more involved, I would say, and way more on the ground. What would you say for those people that you met as you were volunteering and who are still kind of trapped in that mindset, that critical social justice mindset? Like, what would you say to those folks right now?
Yeah, I remember you asking that question, and you referred to like the mentality as like ultra woke, right?
Yes.
First I want to say, I always preface first I want to say, I think ultra woke mentality falls on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally have friends who are ultra woke. I will say that. Politically, though, like most of my friends are liberal or independent. I have conservative friends as well,
Mm-hmm.
but none of my friends are extremists. I haven't lost any friends, but I know what you mean, like me leading a BLM and then like
Yeah.
disassociating. I
Yeah.
haven't lost any friends because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And since I've been on this heterodox journey, like you have as well, like seeing what I'm made of, like seeing what my thoughts are made of and vetting it out, and challenging certain things I used to believe. I haven't lost friends, because we became friends on the notion beyond political stance, and actually like our political stance is like the least different thing about us, if that makes sense. Like I believe in Jesus Christ. A lot of my
Mm-hmm.
friends don't believe in God at all. Like I'm heterosexual. A lot of my friends are in the
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQIA community. Now I will say we have had heated debates. We have had heated conversations. We have had light dialogue about this.
Mm-hmm.
They've really challenged me on what I think. I've really challenged them on what they think. But at the end of the day, we have the same outlook on friendship.
Yeah.
So they still support me.